Today, we're gonna talk about Richmond, Texas, the pros and cons of living in Richmond, Texas. Get ready, we're gonna be mentioning the good, the bad, and the ugly.
We're gonna break down the pros and cons of Richmond, Texas, depending on how they affect your family life, your work life, recreation and fun things to do, and how they affect any financial goals you may have. So, let's break it down.
Let's go. But first, if this is your first time in our channel, please subscribe below and tap that bell for notifications so you're gonna be the first one to know about Richmond, Texas.
We get calls every day from people just like you. And whether you're trying to move in 9 days or 9 months, we want to be here to make your move to Richmond, Texas as smooth as possible. So our information is below to contact us, but let's go find out what the pros and cons of Richmond, Texas is.
Yes, let's go now.
So we're gonna break down pros and cons of Richmond, Texas by 4 categories: family, work, goals that you may have, and fun things to do, etc. Right?
Yeah.
So we're gonna start with family first and the pros and cons. And when we're gonna break down family, it's gonna be for people that have kids, who are maybe are single, or maybe just got married and don't have kids at all. So we'll break down the pros and cons depending on where you fit in that tier, right? So let's start with the pros and cons if you have a family with kids.
So if you have a family, you're gonna think about a school district.
Yep.
And I'm happy to tell you that one of the big pro that has Richmond is the school district. Lamar CISD covers majority of Richmond, Texas, and is one of the best school districts in Greater Houston.
Yeah, it also has a little bit of Fort Bend ISD too in Richmond technically, but the majority is Lamar consolidated. And that's a pro because it's one of the better districts.
Yeah,
If you watch our Fulshire video, you'll see that one of the Lamar high schools out there, Fulshire High School, is one of the better high schools up and coming.
Yeah, and it has one of the most number of graduated for 2024.
And if you go to south of Richmond, like Richmond proper, like downtown Richmond, there's new schools being built and schools being renovated there. So Lamar ISD maybe traditionally was known as not the top. It's slowly becoming up there and doing a really, really good job. Now the con to that is that there are some older schools that some people would prefer not their kids to go to. But I mean, that's why you have us to help navigate the boundaries of what school is you would rather have or not have, depending on what you want to do. But again, the pro is that the school has been very proactive and they're rising to the top and they're trying to compete with Katy ISD. And I mean, part of it is Fort Bend ISD, but they're also trying to compete with Fort Bend ISD and they're doing a great job.
Not only that, I will also say as a pro that they are building more schools because they want to maintain that amount, like how many students by teachers.
Yeah, the ratio.
So, yeah, the ratio. So that's one of all the things that you can say how good is the school district.
It is, and I have one of my people at the Lamar ISD, and they're doing a great job. And the school itself does a really good job of communicating and being so proactive. It's really, really cool. And it does, by the way, if you go to like a Mustangs, Lamar High School football game, it has this traditional small town feel all the same too. So like you still get all of those while being kind of close. Now, let's pretend that maybe you are a starting family with no kids yet, and it's just you and your significant other, and you move to Richmond, Texas. I think one of the best pros of doing that is that you can buy with confidence when you're in Richmond, Texas, because if you happen to have kids later down the road, you will be in a good area for those kids too.
And because you're gonna have your house here, you can rest assured that your house is gonna gain value and you're gonna have equity in a few years.
Yeah, so even if you don't have kids, because you're in a good school system, the value of your home will kind of have the better chances of growing all the same. Now, I would say the con, if you were just married and it's just husband and wife here, and that was me, by the way, 10 years ago, 12 years ago when I first moved to Richmond. The con is that it feels like there's not a lot of fun activities for like a husband and wife or somebody with a partner to do, but that is deceitful. It just feels that way. It just feels that way, but it's actually not like that way because they have all kinds of, I know you're always doing things all the time. That could be just whether you have kids or don't have kids, you'll have fun all the time. There's museums out here, there's movies, there's tons of movies to do. There's a lot of really cool bars, a lot of good bars, a lot of little places that stay open.
Like to meet people. You can go to the museum here in Fort Bend in Richmond, and there is a night that is Latin music only. There is the only thing that we say, you have to be proactive. You're not gonna get the information just staying at home and like no doing anything.
So it's kind of a pro and a con, right? Yeah. So like if you were downtown, you can just walk out your door and have fun and do whatever you want. But you don't have that here, but it exists. You just have to go out of your way and know where it is to find it. But you'll find it for sure. And if you have nobody and it's just you and you want to move to Richmond, Texas, and or maybe you have like a parent or somebody, I think all the same, the pro about living in Richmond, Texas is that it's a very sought after rentable place. So even if you are living by yourself and you need a roommate, you're probably going to find one because there's so many jobs out here that are corporate centered, that are like oil and gas centered or medical related, that it attracts a lot of other single people or people just getting started with their careers and maybe they don't want to buy a house. And they'll be willing to find roommates. So you would find somebody to live with or somebody to help pay the rent or somebody to even rent out your place if you don't want to live there anymore to a bought in Richmond, Texas, right?
Mm-hmm. So now let's jump to the pros and cons, but when it comes to work.
Yes.
How that affects you. You have a family, or if you don't have family, you're single.
Let me give you the con about your work life if you live in Richmond, Texas.
Okay.
Because there's way more positive than negative when it comes to this. So the negative would be absolutely if you're trying to work from downtown and live Richmond, Texas, you're gonna run into traffic all the time. Yeah. Like it's just inevitable, traffic will be the thing. And even if you work in, let's say, Sugar Land or other parts of Richmond, there are times in the day where it's going to get congested. Now, I will play devil's advocate to that and say, tell me another major city that doesn't deal with traffic in general. But
you're trying to be very positive.
That would be the con. That would be the con to me when it comes to your work life. It's just not the distance, but the traffic. Now, I will say this also when it comes to Richmond, anything Texas related, especially if you're from California or New York or something like that, everything outside of Texas, it feels like everything's a mile away, even though it's an hour of traffic. Richmond is a little bit opposite. Texas as a whole is a little bit opposite. Everything's 10 miles away. Yeah. So even though we say it's a traffic, it's also a distance incorporated into that.
By minutes. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's not 10 miles away, it's 10 minutes away. It's not bumper to bumper traffic. It's this one congested spot where the 5 lanes turn into 3 lanes and you have to wait there for 3 minutes and then go. So it's really weird when we talk about traffic, but traffic would be the con.
But I would like to mention a pro when it comes to work, and that is that you have so many options that I would say, why do you have to go to downtown? Just work here.
Exactly.
But there is a lot of options. I would mention a lot of options in the healthcare. There is Oak Bay Medical Center. There is Memorial Hermann, many medical building. Yep. There is a lot of options in the medical field here in Fort Bend. Not only that, the healthcare, but also in the education. There are building so many schools that there are a lot of options if you are a teacher.
Yeah, if you're a teacher, there's a lot of options. And then Richmond and Sugar Land and Richmond and Katy kind of get absorbed together when it comes to jobs. So there are a lot of jobs in Richmond itself, but there's a lot of oil and gas jobs in Sugar Land. And you won't know where Richmond and Sugar Land cross over until you know it, but otherwise it feels like it kind of blends into each other. So it's not just education sector, it's not just the medical sector, it's oil and gas. There's a lot of farm, a lot of agriculture type jobs. There is plants out here close to us. There's just so much going on that the demand job-wise is always there. So as far as work life is concerned, Richmond is probably up there as a very, very good pro. And the con is maybe it takes you 15 minutes instead of 10 minutes if you leave at 9:30 versus leaving at 10:30. But otherwise, man, it's pretty good.
It's pretty good. It's very good.
It's pretty good. Now I'm really trying to think of what's another con to living in Richmond when it comes to work. Now, if you live or if you work in a place that requires you to travel by airplane all the time, and you're not using one of Sugar Land's private, which most people are not going to use Sugar Land's private, that's just up there for like the CFO, CEO. But if you have to live and you have to travel out of Bush or out of Hobby,
that's gonna be a long drive.
That's gonna be a long drive. That can be a pain in the butt. That's gonna be an hour to get there, each way. More. It'll be like $80 in an Uber just to get there too, maybe $60. So I guess technically that's a con. But while you're not working and you are at home, it's gonna be a nice, cool, calm lifestyle. And that's it's kind of still with work, but not work related, is that when you're off work and you live in Richmond, it's really relaxed. It's really calm. It's really, you know, everything's accessible. You don't have to go downtown to go shopping. There's a bunch of shopping stuff close by. So even when you're off work, you're never too far away to getting things that you need. If it's clothes, food, if it's hobbies and things like that, everything's pretty close.
Yeah, now let's go to talk about, we mentioned family, work, and recreation.
Before we continue further with the pros and cons, I think it's important that we just hear from the people who actually live in Richmond and see what kind of pros and cons they have to say. So let's go to the public and see what they have to say about pros and cons.
I love this section.
Yeah, we should talk about recreational stuff, fun stuff. What is there to do or not to do that makes it a pro or a con to live in Richmond? So I don't know. I'm going to talk about the cons first, just to get those out of the way.
Okay.
It's not downtown. It's not downtown Houston.
Course.
It's not downtown anything. The con is that you can't just leave your house and walk to a nightclub, a bodega, something. You won't have that option because it is Texas and we value our space and our privacy and all of that kind of stuff. So if you want to do something fun, it's going to require you getting ready, go out to your car, drive somewhere, park somewhere, go out and do all the stuff. It's not necessarily available to you.
Yeah, but you have options. As we mentioned before, there is a lot of things to do. The only thing is you have to find that information. You can call us and we can give you that information.
Yeah, just call us and we'll tell you.
Yeah, but there is bars, restaurants. There is some places where you can go and meet people, read a book, have a drink.
There's festivals. There's a concert hall for concerts, and that's not just top grade artists go there all the time too. It's not just small people. So there's everything really.
There is everything. You can go and camp in a park or trail, bird watch, cycling clubs. There is a lot of options here.
Yeah, so when it comes to fun, and not just that, there's also a bunch of nerdy stuff too. So if you're into one of those like Dungeons and Dragons and card games and Warhammer and trivia, like you're gonna have all of those options here in Richmond just like you would anywhere else. So the con is that it's just gonna take you 10 minutes to get there or 15 minutes to get there. You can't just walk there and you're gonna have to maybe, think about this but all of the pros are there. Richmond has literally everything to offer, and it doesn't matter if you're a family of 5, 6, 20, if you're single, there's options at all hours. Now, granted, I will say this is Richmond. So there are certain laws when it comes to drinking. There's most places, if you go downtown, stay open till like 2 a.m. And let you kind of party. And then sometimes there's after hours after that. There are select bars here in Richmond and that stay open till 2 a.m., but I would say the majority don't. So it could feel a little quiet to you if you're used to that. But at the same time, I've kind of always liked the idea, if I want a place to party, it's not where I live.
Of course,
right?
That's what I was thinking right now. If you want to be in that place where you just walk out of the house and there is a party, this is not a place.
It's not the place for you, but you can still have that. It's just, it's just 20, 30 minutes down the road. And then you can know that when you come back home, you're away from all of that and not have to like deal with the noise and the stuff like that. Now, because this is Richmond, it's sort of a small town as a whole, everybody out here is very friendly. They're very accommodating. So it's very common for the neighbors themselves just to have little get-togethers and stuff like that.
Exactly. Not only the neighbors, I would say also the businesses. We recorded a video a few weeks ago in a business, in a coffee bar. Yeah, that we learned that they have that vibe of family. The owners, they're like a team. Each business help the other business, and they don't see each other as competition. They see us as we are a family, and we can provide and have a place where the family of Richmond can go and have a drink or have a book or it's amazing. Or have a gift.
A lot of community and a lot of businesses kind of function as a community as a whole. And there's a lot of events all the time. Like even when we went to Lit Bar, which is like a wine bar where you can read a book. It's awesome. They have events there. They had karaoke night. They had family events for families to come together. So you're always going to have options when it comes to recreational things. Now, will you be able to go, let's just say, touristy type stuff, where you can go see the Eiffel Tower from Richmond?
No.
Not technically.
No, but you can go and ride a horse.
You can go ride a horse. You can do fun things. You can live your life. So there's not a lot of tourist stuff. That's probably a con. So if your family comes to visit you in Richmond, I know this happens to me when my family comes from out of town. Like, what is there to do? What touristy stuff? I'm like, we can go to NASA.
Yeah.
NASA's going to be a little bit far away.
We can go to the Minute Maid.
We go to Minute. Yeah. So that's not going to be close by. That's going to be a little bit far away. But there are a lot of things to do for the family, a lot of things to do for people who come in out of time. It's just not touristy related. It's more, let's just say it's more memory making type activities than it is touristy type activities.
Wow, that's an statement right there.
So I don't know, that's just kind of how I feel about the pros and cons. But again, just like the work stuff, there's more pros to me that outweigh the cons.
I know, yeah, because we love Richmond, what we're gonna say.
And we're biased, we live here, so just trust us when we say that. But okay, so there's one more thing we're going to talk about, and that's any kind of financial goals you have, and what are the pros and cons if you have financial goals, and when it comes to living in Richmond as a whole. And that's going to be a really interesting one because everybody has different ideas of what that means. Sometimes it means, can I make a lot of money? Sometimes it means, can I save a lot of money? Sometimes it means, is there a lot of opportunity there? And things like that. So we're going to break that down and see what the pros and cons of financial goals are in Richmond. Again, this is our opinion. We are not financial experts, but this is just kind of based on our experience and based on the clients that we work with. So the last point we're talking about is finances and financial goals you may have. And the reason why we made that one of the points when it comes to pros and cons of Richmond, Texas, is because I often say that Houston's not necessarily a tourist city. It's a money city. It's a city where people come to make money, save money, have a different lifestyle for themselves. So let's incorporate financial goals into what are the pros and cons as you're considering different areas to move when it comes to Houston. Richmond, just like any other city, has some pros, has some cons, depending on what your financial goals are.
Definitely. And to start talking about the financial goals, I would like to start talking about real estate.
Okay.
Because of the location that has Richmond is so close to Houston, and we know for a fact that Houston is growing so fast, so much that is growing Houston, that makes Richmond a prime location for investors or for people that wants to buy and get more from the money. When you buy a house here in Richmond, Texas, you know that you're gonna gain equity.
Yep. Strong chance you're gonna have equity out here.
Definitely. In my case, for example, I bought my house for $230 5 years ago, and now my house is about $340.
Wow.
Yeah, in 5 years.
Yeah.
We're gonna say that.
Easy, that's good money.
It's good money, and I love my neighborhood.
Yep.
I love my neighborhood, I love the neighbors, and I love the school system that we are in Richmond, Texas. I am in Richmond. We have a Lamar SD in our neighborhood, and I love the location of my house and how well maintained is the neighborhood and the houses.
Yep. So I think you're right. There's a lot of equity to be had here in Richmond, Texas. Overall in Houston as a whole, there's a 4% growth rate every year on average. Sometimes that's a little bit more, sometimes it's a little bit less, but it's something that we are very proud of. And most people, obviously it's real estate, right? So at the end of the day, it's always going to be technically a risk to buy a house and hope that it grows in equity. But I would say that Houston and Richmond as a whole is one of the more mitigated risks compared to other parts of the United States when it comes to buying real estate.
Yeah, and because of the location too, not only you're gonna have to buy a house to live, but also you can buy a house to rent it. And there is a demand for renting in this area.
Big time. There's all kinds of jobs that require people to be here for 6 months, 3 months, a year, 2 years. There's all kinds of relocations from other parts of the world where they're not sure if they want to live here for the rest of their lives. So renting is always in high demand out here. So when it comes to financial goals, if your goal is to maybe buy a house, rent it out, or flip it, or sit in it for a while, buy and hold, you have a really good chance to making that work when it comes to Richmond as a whole. Now, there are some cons to the financial goals aspect of it when it comes to real estate. And I will say that Texas and Houston in general has what we call a mud tax, which is a tax that we use to develop the infrastructure of a certain area ahead of time to get the sewer and the water and stuff like that going. So it's in addition to the already property taxes you have. Just say that in short, mud tax or any kind of taxes means that you'll probably pay more in property taxes for certain houses in certain locations than you do others.
I hate
And
it.
that part does hurt you a little bit. So it does mean that your mortgage may be a little more. Yeah, extra taxes, your mortgage might be a little bit more every year because of that. But the mud tax does get paid down. Thankfully, it's technically a loan for an area. So as more people move in, or as people start paying off that loan through their taxes, it goes lower and lower every year. So I would say that is the con. So maybe your mortgage is a little bit higher in certain areas than others, even though it's the same price home because of the property taxes. I will say a pro though, and to your point, because Houston is growing so much and people are expanding and going out to the suburbs more and more and more, all of the developers that used to invest in certain movie theaters and certain restaurants and certain shopping locations all in town are starting to make the way out this way. So we've had over the last 10 years so much development when it comes to commercial space, to little shopping centers, malls being renovated as we speak, and things like that. And the pro to that is that the city of Richmond also does a great job of not letting all these big dogs come in and take over an area. They actually want local entrepreneurs to come also do things too. So while you do see a big Target here that's being built right next to it, it's not hard to believe that right across the street is a
boutique.
Yeah, it's a boutique store, a mom and pop restaurant, or just something that somebody wanted to do for themselves. There is a good balance for that. So if your goal is to build something here, a store, a restaurant, whatever, you have a chance for that.
Yeah, you have the support and you will have the public too that is gonna visit your store and support small business.
Big time. Now, I will say this, so the con is that there are certain parts, just like anything, you want to be strategic. You can't just pick any commercial spot in Richmond and think you'll have the foot traffic.
Of course,
some places have higher traffic than others, but that's what you have us for, to kind of help you mitigate those things. But those financial goals are something that, like, I think if that's something you wanted to build here, you can do that. We know plenty of entrepreneurs, plenty of business owners. If you look at one of our videos about the map of Richmond, that's built in a mom and pop local owned wine bar that lets you read there. So that's just a really good example of that.
Earlier in the video, I mentioned and I talked about Richmond, comparing real estate in Richmond with other parts of Houston. And another big pro that I would say with Richmond is to add to the great location that it has, the great feeling, the support for small businesses, and the financial goals that you have, is the houses that you can get for your money.
Yep.
I would say that is very affordable real estate here in Richmond.
Yeah, it's one of the most affordable places probably in the United States for a city. I mean, obviously, if you're going to compare it to the middle of nowhere, Arkansas, no offense, they probably have cheaper homes, but we are a city here and we're attached to Houston, so it's very affordable.
It is. I think we owed a video about what you can get for $300,000 or $600,000 and $1 million.
Yeah, and if you compare that to places in California or New York or Colorado or other places, you're going to notice that Richmond is very, very affordable. And that's important because a lot of people move out here for that reason. And if your financial goal is like, hey, I want a lot of house for a little bit of money, you have that. If your goal is to, hey, I want to have a lot of house for a lot less money so I can start going to Disney World every year, you have that. So if you have the ability to maybe buy something in the $300,000 range, $400,000 range, that probably, depending where you come from, would cost you maybe twice that where you are, you can take those savings and just reuse that money into something else.
And keep the house, wait for 10 years, and we will have another conversation how much your equity has grown in the house.
And just sell it and then use that money to buy another house.
Exactly.
I will say this, a lot of the times for first-time home buyers here in Richmond, or just in general that I talk about buying houses in steps. And you can buy a house here for $250,000 and live in it for 3 years, sell it, take that money, buy a $400,000 house, and the $400,000 house payments will be the same as the $250,000 payments, assuming the interest rates are the same, because you use all the equity from the first house to buy the one down. That way, you know, your principal is probably similar, if not close to it. So that's how people, without making more income, are able to upgrade their houses every 4 or 5 years, 3 years even. And I used to say that it takes about 3 years of living in a house to break even, but now it's probably less than that. Now it's like 2 years to break even before we start profiting out here.
2 years.
Well, I think we did a good job of just talking about all the pros and cons of Richmond, Texas. Obviously, there's a lot more we can talk about.
Yeah.
There's so many more. And there's so many that we have to like show you physically. Like you would have to like call us, say, hey, can you drive us to this? And I will tell you the pros and cons of this area versus this area, this neighborhood, school versus this school. But again, you have to kind of contact us to get that information, because this video would be like 3 hours long.
Exactly. I agree, David. We can stay here and talk for hours about Richmond, but the best to do is to come here and feel it yourself. Schedule in your calendar a weekend and come to Richmond, and we'll be happy to show you the city.
So we'll see you guys next time.
Bye.